Hello guys and welcome. Zar here again, and today I want to talk Monster Hunter Wilds. More specifically, we're going to talk about the weapons. So we have 14 different types of weapons, and I want to briefly try to explain them to try and find a match for you. I'm gonna try to break down the weapons in a couple of small categories to make it easier for you to choose your weapon, and I'm also gonna try to show which weapons are easier to play, but also how hard they are to master. They're both gonna be represented through these bars and these stars right here. The bars are gonna be for how easy the weapons are to play, and the stars on how hard they are to master. But we also have to keep in mind that Monster Hunter Wilds is also adding weapon swapping. So you're not only picking one weapon for yourself, you're picking two. But also you can have two of the same weapon. Since weapons have different elemental types, you can have two of the same weapon with different elements to make your hunts easier. We have to keep in mind that the focus mode is also available for all the weapons, which allows you to aim your weapon at the monster, spin with the camera to make it easier for you to hit your target, but it's also adding a couple of new moves to an already pretty big combo library. And new players also keep in mind, you're not locked into a weapon in this game. Even though you might use some of your materials to make new weapons, you can always go back, farm them again, and then make new weapons with those materials, so you can try pretty much every single one of them. If you don't like a weapon, just go back, try another one, and have some fun with the game. Be sure to try them out so you can find the one that's good for you. So let's get right into it. So to start off, we have the Greatsword. This is our standard Unga Bonga boy. It's for the guys who feel like they either saw way too much Berserk,
I'm retarded?
or just feel like the testosterone levels are way too high. The Greatsword is a slow with a kind of a medium range weapon that dishes a lot of damage. In Monster Hunter Wilds, they're trying to make all the weapons a bit more flowy to play. That also includes this bad boy right here. You can charge up this weapon up to 3 times. You can see it's shown by how the weapon glows as you charge it up. And for each charge level, you're gonna do more damage. Usually a weapon that can be really easy to play, but hard to master because you need to understand a lot of the timing for the monster. If you don't properly understand and you just get hit mid-charge, you're gonna be left crying in the corner because the monster bitch slapped you back to the Shadow Realm. So playing the Greatsword can be really satisfying in terms of having that big numbers, but also can be quite difficult to play if you don't properly know how to play around the monster. But a couple of the new mechanics might make your life easier. This weapon offers you a guard mechanic, which now has also a parry on the guard, and we also have, it seems like, clash mechanics, which make that power fantasy even higher. The focus mode also has you changing sides much easier, maybe turning into an 180, maybe a 360 to land those no scopes on those monsters. But jokes aside, the Greatsword can be a pretty easy weapon to play and pick up, and can be pretty satisfying to play as well. So now for the Longsword, one of the favorites out there. And let's be honest, this one is pretty much for all the weebs out there because, well, does it even need an explanation? With that aside, the Longsword is a very flowy combo weapon. You're gonna feel like you're dancing and slashing the monster around, and the longer you play it, the easier it's gonna feel to just land those combos, to land those parries. And talking about parries, the Longsword has a couple of very satisfying moves. Pretty much every move can go into your special sheath, and the special sheath can land on to other moves, and always going into a cycle and keep dancing around and dishing damage and just feeling like you are destroying the monster while also looking pretty fucking cool. So the Longsword also has a couple of new moves. We did have the Helm Splitter back on Monster Hunter World, and now it has a new finisher where you do your Helm Splitter and then you just anime slash the shit out of the monster. But it also uses one more gauge. Talking about gauge, The longsword works with the gauge bar. You're gonna finish one spirit blade combo and you're gonna gain a gauge bar. If you land all your hits, your gauge is gonna go up to white, from white to yellow, and from yellow to red. In Monster Hunter Wilds, they added a new mechanic when you are on your red gauge, which now you don't auto sheath after you complete a combo. You can keep your weapon out and keep destroying the monster and keep attacking the monster and keep your dancing going. Still talking about gauge, we now have a much better side dashing for better precision and also to make your gauge comboing much easier as well. For the focus mode, we kind of have like a poke slash, like a double slash to poke the wounds of the monster and then combo into other moves as well. The longsword is probably one of the hardest weapons to master, but probably also one of the easiest one to start with. And now for the sword and shield, one of the most classic weapons in Monster Hunter as well. My first impression was it was kind of a boring weapon, but as you play the game more, you understand that it was one of the most versatile weapons in the game, because it allows you to also use items while you have your weapons unsheathed. And honestly, it also has a pretty substantial move list. It has some pretty cool attacks, and Monster Hunter Wilds is also adding a couple of new moves as well. For the focus mode, we have a pretty cool stab mount combo, which you basically just charge up your sword and you stab the monster while mounting up on it, and you have a follow-up into a aerial attack, which looks pretty cool. Besides that, we also have like a charge leap down stab as well. We have a lot of strafing, a lot more mobility with your dashes. We also have a lot of strafing moves to help you reposition yourself and dodge attacks while keeping you attacking, but also just keep the combos going as well. We have a new shield bash. We have a double shield bash, kind of similar to what the charge blade has. And also Perfect Rush has a lot of new combos as well. And even though the sword and shield might lack a little bit in range, it does make up for it in both speed and defense capabilities. Even though the shield is quite small, it can still tank a lot of damage. The sword and shield is not a hard weapon, but it's not also necessarily easy. It's a very flowy, combo-y weapon, so getting to know the combos helps a lot. And having the possibility of using items while you are on the move opens up possibilities to do a couple of new things as well. It's usually one of those weapons that people pick up when they have been playing the game for a while and already have a lot of experience with both monsters and also items at your disposition. Beyblade! Sorry, I mean Dual Blade. Yeah. So the Dual Blade is one of the most agile, short-ranged weapons in the game. It doesn't have a lot of defensive capabilities, but it's one of those weapons that's going to be dealing a lot of damage. You're going to be dashing forward. You're going to be changing modes so you can have more dodging. We have the Adapt Dodging, which is a new mode for the weapon. We also have the Feral mode, which is focused on doing lots of damage. It seems like Monster Hunter Wilds is adding a couple of new modes for the Dual Blade. We had the Demon mode in Monster Hunter World, which was focused on just slashing down the monster, but it also consumes a lot of stamina. Manage your resource, in this case your stamina, is very important in using this weapon. What it lacks in range, it compensates in mobility. It's very fast. You're going to be dodging around a lot, and having a lot of new combos is also pretty nice. We have the Heavenly Blade Dance Spine Dash. This name is freaking insane, and it just, for me, it's just new Beyblades lashing into the back of the monster, which looks pretty awesome, and it's sure to do a lot of damage as well. For the focus mode, we have something that's pretty cool. We have a leap double slash, where you just jump into the air and then you mount back with your clutch claw and then you just slash through the whole monster like a Beyblade again. And it just looks pretty cool. Keep in mind, the Dual Blade has a gauge mode similar to the Longsword. When you have your gauge full, you can change into the Demon mode, the Archdemon mode, to do more damage, but also consume that stamina and gauge as well. So keep that in mind. The Dual Blade is not a hard weapon. It's a pretty easy weapon to pick up. I wouldn't say it's one of the most complex weapons to play, but it's one of those weapons where you need to know how to move around the monster. Moving on, we have the Hammer, also one of the OG weapons of Monster Hunter. This is your bonk machine. You're just gonna be bonking heads, doing blunt damage to the monster. And blunt damage in this game is usually associated with knocking down mobs. You just wanna be bonking his head all the way so you can keep him down and just keep comboing all the way to do a lot of damage. The hammer is also a very short ranged weapon, but it deals shit ton of damage. So if you know how to take advantage of your hyper armor or your guard, you're gonna be sure to be close to the monster, knock him down, and do lots of big numbers. And the hammer now in Monster Hunter Wilds also has a couple of new mechanics as well. Besides your spin Beyblade moves, we also have a guard parry similar to what the Greatsword got. So you can parry the monster, knock him down, and just do the big numbers while charging up. The hammer has also similar mechanic to the Greatsword with the charge. You're gonna keep charging the weapon and you're gonna see a glow as the charge goes up. When you're fully charged, you're sure to be doing more damage. But again, watch out. The monster does hit you while you're charging. You can lose that charge. The monster can, again, slap you back into the Shadow Realm. Besides the guard parry, it also seems like the hammer is getting hyper armor doing some of its charge moves, which is pretty cool. So you can avoid a situation where you go into the Shadow Realm, tank through those hits, and bitch slap the monster back. One of the things that hammer used to lack a little in Monster Hunter World was kind of in mobility while you were fighting. And now the hammer just got a new mechanic where you can use the clutch claw dash. During your moves, you can clutch claw to pull you into a kind of a dash while keeping your charge as well. It's a lot more mobility. It does make the hammer a bit more complex in its gameplay, but it does seem pretty cool as soon as you get the hang of it. The hammer is not a very complicated weapon as well. It's one of the easiest weapons to pick up for sure. It's very simple, but I would say it's kind of in a middle ground when it comes into the difficulty to master this one. So the hunting horn. So the hunting horn, basically, if you ever played an RPG and you had that bard friend that likes to do those weird builds, he put up 20 points into strength, 1 point into intelligence. He looks like he's a freaking Mr. Olympia. He takes his loot and he knocks the fuck out of you. That's the hunting horn. The hunting horn is a weapon for those players who like to also buff, but also likes to dish some damage. Just like the hammer, it also deals blunt damage, so it's a very good weapon for knocking down monsters. But at the same time, you're gonna be playing those sick tunes that can buff your allies, but also buff yourself. Each hunting horn has a different combination of songs with different buffs. So picking your hunting horn with the buffs you want to provide, very important as well. Besides that, the hunting horn is also a very strong weapon with some mid-range, unlike the hammer. This one can hit from pretty far away. It has some pretty nice new mechanics. They're adding echo bubbles that can spread the buff on the ground on a very large area, but at the same time, we have resonance attacks that can resonate with both the bubble area that you have on the ground, but you can also place some echo bubbles on the monster, play your song, and then have it go boom. One thing to watch out is as you switch out from your hunting horn, a lot of those buffs that you had are either gonna go away or you're gonna have a decreased version of those buffs. Another new move that was also added to the hunting horn is a kind of a charge spin shockwave that can also parry monsters. Parry seems to be a pretty new mechanic that has been added to a lot of different weapons, which makes for a lot of new cooler mechanics, a lot of new cooler gameplay as well. The hunting horn is kind of a support damage dealing weapon. It's kind of a difficult weapon to play and also kind of a difficult weapon to master. But as soon as you get the hang of it, you're both going to be dishing some huge numbers and also some pretty cool buffs for your teammates. And now for the lance. Who plays lance? Honestly, I was kind of hoping when I saw the mount that they were gonna kind of do jousting in this game, but hey, it doesn't seem like we're getting that. But anyway, the lance is I would say it's a pretty mid to high range weapon. I personally, it's not one of my favorites, but it can be a pretty fun weapon to play as well. As it has a shield, you can block a lot of the attacks, and you can just stab back the monster with your lance. Monster Hunter Wilds, a lot of more fluid mechanics are being added to the lance, a lot more shield bashes, a lot more pokes. We have a charge parry into a poke as well. It's not that much of a fast weapon. It usually has a mid movement, gonna be that fast, but it also has one of the best shielding in the game. It can really tank those hits. You're not gonna lose a lot of HP, and then you can punish back the monsters with pretty powerful counters. So for those people that like to have a more defense stance and also be able to dish some numbers, the lance might be the right choice for you. But from what I know, it's not a very hard weapon to play, but it can be a very hard weapon to master. So be sure to try it out if it fits you. And honestly, I really hope we're gonna have a jousting mod in the future. If they do add that, I'm definitely playing a lance. And for the big brother of the lance, we have the gun lance. The gun lance has a lot of new mechanics in Monster Hunter Wilds, and honestly, the drill pretty much makes it Besides the new drill, which already looks awesome, we also have a lot new shell moves. So you're gonna be able to do a lot more sweeps with explosions. You can also now do a charge attack with a shell while you are guarding as well, which is pretty cool. So the gun lance is kind of a mix between having a lance, so you have those pretty powerful defense moves and also pretty powerful counters, but you also have a couple of other offensive mechanics. And you have to keep in mind those shells that you use, you also have to reload them, and you can also place them directly on a monster for some big damage. Range-wise, it's a mid-range weapon. It also does some pretty big numbers, like I said. And now, unlike Monster Hunter World and Monster Hunter Rise, you can place 2 shells on a monster as well, so you can do even more damage. I don't have that much experience with the gun lance, but I would say it's a pretty easy weapon to pick up at the start, but it can be a pretty mid to hard weapon to master, as it does have a plethora of moves, and knowing how to properly use those shells can be pretty hard as well, since you have to properly time when you're gonna reload and not be just a sitting duck waiting to be knocked by the monster. It's not super slow in movement wise, you're gonna be able to move around, but it's kind of a median movement range. So for the switch axe is basically 2 weapons into one. You're gonna have your axe, where you start off and you can charge up your gauge bar. You can switch up freely, you don't really need the gauge, but when you have the gauge up, you're gonna be dealing a lot more damage in that sword mode. And now in Monster Hunter Wilds, the sword mode has an enhanced mode which has even more range, and it does a lot more damage. When you have that gauge up, you can also do a lot of new combos. So you can do elemental discharge, where you basically just mount up on the monster and you can do a big explosion for a lot of damage, knocking down the monster. So it's a combo of slashing damage with also elemental explosive damage. In Monster Hunter Wilds, just like a lot of other weapons, we're also being added a parry combo, kind of like a perfect guard, something similar to the Longsword, and also a new sweeping strike as well. For the focus mode, we're getting kind of a revamped version of the wild slashing that you have in your axe mode, but now it transitions into an elemental discharge for a lot of damage. So the switch axe is a very versatile weapon, where you can have kind of a mid-range but also a long-range weapon in just one. But it also can be a bit of a more complex weapon to play, since you basically have 2 different weapons into one. But I would say, as someone who played the switch axe, is not that complex to play, and the combos flow into each other pretty easily. You can enhance the sword, that enhances the axe, and then you go back into the axe that enhances the sword, and you just flow around switching like a freaking transformer and just doing a lot of damage to those. I would say it's kind of a mid difficulty weapon to pick up, but I would say also mid weapon to master. Next, we get the Charge Blade, which, if you ever saw Chainsaw Man, you're probably gonna like this weapon. The Charge Blade, kind of similar to the Switch Axe, is also kind of 2 weapons into one. You have first, you have your knife and shield, kind of a sword and shield vibe. But then, as you charge your files, you have 6 files that slowly get charged up as you attack a monster. And when they're fully charged up, you can fill them up. And when they're filled up, you can use those files to do extra elemental damage. You can change into your axe mode or chainsaw mode, do some pretty cool combos, and also those elemental discharges as well. During your combos, you can enhance your axe mode, you can enhance your dagger, and you can also enhance your shield. And those are going to give you different bonuses. It's pretty straightforward. When you enhance the axe, you're going to do more damage during axe mode. For the sword, you're also going to have more damage on the sword. And the shield is going to be able to tank more damage and also have some pretty cool parries. Talking about parry, the Charge Blade is getting a new parry switch combo. So you parry the monster, switching into the axe and leading into a freaking huge combo for the elemental discharge if you have those files charged up. One other thing that's also pretty cool, we're getting overcharge for the file. So you can double charge your weapon or your shield to extend the duration of the buff and increase the damage buff that you get from those files as well. The Charge Blade during its Sword and Shield mode, it's a pretty short-ranged weapon, but as soon as you change back into that axe, you're gonna have some medium to long-range attacks. If you have the axe charged up, you can also do the elemental discharges through a lot of different attacks, which are gonna increase that range even further. The focus mode for a Charge Blade brings in the chainsaw attack, so you're gonna switch quickly into the chainsaw and then just lash through the enemy. So it seems like the Charge Blade is getting a lot more flow in those switches and a lot more options in how you combo from your Sword and Shield into the axe. I would say the Charge Blade is not that hard of a weapon to start off, but it's a pretty hard weapon to master. But it feels very satisfying, and changing between the Sword and Shield to your axe, it's pretty flowy. It's not that hard to do. Getting those files charged up and properly used, it does have a bit of a learning curve, but it's not that complex. As soon as you play the weapon a little bit, you're gonna easily be able to use those and have a lot of fun with this weapon. For movement, during your Sword and Shield, you have a lot of strafes. During your axe mode, you're gonna be a bit slower, but that is compensated on how much damage you're gonna be doing. The Insect Glaive is for those people who never really knew how to identify themselves properly, ended up a little bit confused, and saw themselves ending up as an attack helicopter.
I sexually identify as an attack helicopter. Ever since I was a boy, I dreamed of soaring over the oil fields, dropping hot sticky loads on disgusting foreigners. People say to me that a person being a helicopter is impossible, and I'm retarded, but I don't care. I'm beautiful.
With jokes aside, the Insect Glaive is a pretty fun weapon. It's one of my favorites. It has a lot of aerial combat. You can stay on the air for a long time, and you can also mount monsters pretty easily as well. One very important element of the Insect Glaive is the insect. So you have a kinsect. I don't know why it's not insect, it's a kinsect. The kinsect can extract essence from monsters. You have 3 types of essence, 1, 2, and 3. And now with the updated UI elements, it's much easier to know exactly where you get those extracts from your kinsect as you aim in the monster. But usually it stands as 1 is for the head, 2 is for the body, and 3 is for the tail. And each of those essences is gonna give you different buffs. When you have all 3 of them at the same time, you unlock a lot of new moves and new finishers for the Insect Glaive, as well as being able to fly for a lot longer and reset your attacks on the air as well. So for this version of Monster Hunter, we're getting a couple of new moves. We have a pretty funny one where you stab the monster in the back and you just spin around, kind of like a Goku, or I don't know, kind of Shaolin move, maybe Black Myth Wukong vibes. We also have a new finisher move for your Glaive combo. It uses all of your essence, kind of lands into a tornado of the insect, which does a lot of damage and looks pretty cool at the same time. For the focus mode, it kind of reminds me a bit of how you used to extract essence in Monster Hunter World. But unlike Monster Hunter World, you can use focus mode to do different combos for this weapon, kind of turning your insect into a railgun sect, which can pierce the monster and do a lot of damage at the same time and also extract those essences. The Insect Glaive is a fast weapon with a lot of mobility. You're not going to be sitting on the ground. You're both going to be flying around the monster. It's a very fun weapon to play, at least for me. I would say it's not that hard to play and also not that hard to master. And having that extra mobility is pretty cool. You can also put different elements in your kinsect to give you different buffs, which is also a really nice added bonus. And one little extra thing they're also adding in Monster Hunter Wilds is now that the kinsect, it auto returns to you after it collects the essence. And now it also has an enhanced mode for your kinsect where you can extract up to 3 essences at the same time. And now for those Call of Duty players, we have the light bowgun, which has a lot of improved movement. Now we have a lot more dashing. We have sliding as well while you are also shooting. We have a dash into a burst fire mode, which also seems pretty interesting. And just to give a quick overview, the bowguns in general, they work with ammo. You have different types of ammo you can use during your hunt. Those can be from elemental types, paralysis, sleep, mortar. You have many different types of ammos you can use to make your life hunting those monsters easier. In previous instances of Monster Hunter, you usually needed to have all types of weapons besides the normal type, which was infinite. Those were limited as well. But now with Monster Hunter Wilds, it seems like both the normal type, piercing, and spread shots are all gonna be infinite, so you can use as much as you want, and only the special types of ammo are gonna be limited, so you would have to craft it and get it from your camp. Have the mines you can place on the ground, and the monster is gonna step over them and just gonna get knocked over. For the focus strike, we also have a charged ammo type that has a big recoil after it gets shot and can also knock monsters down. Besides that, we also have a charge mechanic. As you hit your shots, a bar on the bottom right is gonna get charged and you're gonna get a special firing mode, faster firing or a stronger firing, and usually those types they change with the weapons that you craft. And for the light bowgun, I would say it has an easy barrier of entrance. You can pick it up and just start shooting monsters. And it also has like this medium high mastering degree, because it does have a lot of resources that you can use, the mines, the different types of ammos, and it doesn't do as much damage as the heavy bowgun, so getting the hunt stun can take a little longer. So knowing how to use your ammos and manage your resources is a big part of playing both bowguns. Going straight into the heavy bowgun, we also got a couple of new things. The heavy bowgun it doesn't have as much movement as the light bowgun. You don't have as much dashing around, but you also have an auto guard. So when the monster tries to slap you down, usually gonna auto guard those attacks so you don't get knocked down, and you can just counter the monster with your shots. The heavy bowgun is also getting infinite ammo for piercing shots, spread shots, and normal types. And we also have better UI for the wyvern shot, which is similar to what we talked about in the light bowgun, where you hit your shots and you charge up on the bottom right a bar, and then you can have like a heavy machine gun mode, or just like a big shot that's gonna do a lot of damage. That can be the wyvern shot. And we also have the addition of a I like to call it a touch of death. So we have like a stick in the front of the heavy bowgun that whenever a monster just comes up to it and touch it, it's gonna explode and can knock down monsters and do a lot of damage. Both the light bowgun and the heavy bowgun are also getting improved range meters, so you know exactly if you are within that ideal range for your damage, because if you're outside, your shots are not going to do as much damage as if you are inside of that window. I would say the heavy bowgun is a very easy weapon to pick up, and I would say it has a medium level of difficulty to master. Since you have to be changing between your ammo types, you kind of have to get used to getting that change in the right timings, and also being in the ideal range in which ammos to use for the different types of monsters. So it does have a nice learning curve. And for our last weapon, we have the bow. The bow is also a pretty cool weapon. It does have similar mechanics to the bowguns, with a couple of unique things specific to the bow. The bow can have coding for your arrows that can apply different effects to it. So paralysis, sleep, more damage, and other types as well. We have new types of dodging. We have a perfect dodge in the bow now, similar to the longsword. We also have homing arrows. So you can have a tracer, you put that tracer on the monster, and then your arrows are gonna home straight into the monster, which seems pretty cool. And it kind of reminds me a bit of the magic archer from Dragon's Dogma 2. For the focus mode, we have arrows that home into the wounds, following up into a dragon pierced that also homes into the monster and just does a lot of damage as well. We have a bunch of new aerial moves for the bow, so you can just jump and shoot. We also have a shotgun mode where you can fire 6 arrows at the same time. And we have a aerial combo, the aerial silk attack or something like that, where you just jump up into the air and you shoot the monster down from up high. But it doesn't do as much damage as you used to do in Rise. The bow, I would say it's not that easy of an weapon to pick up, even though the aiming is pretty easy and just shooting the monster is pretty easy. The normal shots don't do as much damage as you would expect, so using the other resources that the bow has is pretty important. So I would say it has an easy to medium barrier of entrance, while having actually a pretty good skill ceiling as well. So mastering it can take a bit, but it's a pretty fun weapon to play for those players that like playing with those ranged weapons. So guys, that's it for today's video. I hope I was able to help you a little bit pick a weapon for yourself. And don't forget, just have a little bit of patience. If you don't like a weapon, just go back on it. Try another weapon. There's a very big variety. So just try to find one that fits you, fits your gameplay style, and just have some fun with the game. I hope to catch you hunting out there. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below so I can interact with you guys. And I'll catch you in the next one. Czar out.